We've gotten an awful lot of high-tech, efficient little cars lately, but how about one that's got some real old-fashioned guts? That may be what we're dealing with right now. Let's drive the 2014 Ford Fiesta ST, available only with the 6-speed manual. Bless their hearts, and check the tech. So what is a Fiesta ST? First of all, it's the hatch body car only. Up front, a hot little turbo motor. Then you got 4 nice-looking 17-inch wheels all around, unique to this car. Body style, quite a bit massaged. Deep front chin, a very nice-looking, deep, aggressive rear fascia. Deep rocker panel treatment connecting those, and a little ball cap lid on the rear hatch. What you can't see underneath is a sport suspension. What you definitely can see on our car is the color Green Envy. Not as clever as they were in the 70s when Ford had colors like anti-establishment and Freudian guilt, but I'll take it. Not too different than any other Fiesta, my Ford Touch and this connected head unit are base. Although navigation is optional, that module isn't always there in the upper right corner. Now here's my issue with this My Ford Touch, which has had plenty of knocks for being too detailed and fiddly. In this case, it's also too small and too far. When I'm comfortably in this car, and I'm actually sitting forward for the camera right now, that's not really reachable without me pulling myself forward on the wheel to get to it. I don't like the Fords that have it up here, the little cars. The bigger Fords put it down lower and nearer, and it's important to notice that. See if it works for you. You can also plug in an iPod via USB. Here's your CD slot right here. This car still has optical, satellite radio, AM and FM. And that's also got HD radio on top of that. Now luckily, given the distance and smallness of this, climate control is broken out separately down here. Now we have the optional Recaro seat package in this car, which is kind of like that girlfriend you had back in high school who was a foot taller than you, just grabs you everywhere. We got bolsters here that are so narrow, and not adjustable by the way, that if you're big of rib cage, you almost run aground on them and don't even feel the back of the seat much. Gotta wedge myself in there. Big old thigh bolsters as well. If you didn't have these, which by the way include heating and heated mirrors, this cabin gets pretty plain Jane pretty quick, so I pretty much endorse these. Nothing unusual in the instrument cluster, but one thing is missing overall in this car. Put it in reverse and nothing happens. You can't get a rear camera in this car, optional, standard, or otherwise. Kind of a weird oversight because given its body design and its huge C-pillars, it's a little hard to see out of in parking maneuvers. Now speaking of that rear camera, notice what I did to try to invoke it. That's right, 6-speed manual in this car. Notable because manual gearboxes are getting rare as hen's teeth in many applications, and that's the only choice you can get on this vehicle. Right on Ford. One last thing I want to show you, this goofy little button right here. They're kind of taking a page out of the Kia Soul or vice versa, and that is this one that changes the color of illumination around the cabin. There's a light underneath here. A friend of mine was asking, what is this for? Does a pen go there? No, it's actually for nothing that I can tell except for the light to live under. It also controls the lighting under the footwell and down here in the cup holders. Ford likes these lighting schemes. I can live without it. Now under the short little snout is a short little engine. A 1.6-liter inline-4 sitting side saddle driving the front wheels only. But it's highly tuned, has a turbocharger and direct injection, Ford's EcoBoost combination, but in this case kind of tweaked more toward performance. The numbers bear that out. 197 horse, 202 foot-pounds of torque. All that going into a car that weighs just a little over 2,700 pounds. Gets you up to 60 in about 6.5, 6.7 seconds with, again, that one choice only 6-speed manual. They've also hotted up the suspension all around so it's firmer and a little more aggressive, and you've got torque vectoring on this car that's done by the brakes. We'll talk more about that on the road in a moment. Your MPG is really good, 2635, considering how much performance you're also getting out of this car. So there's not a lot of sacrifice going on here. One thing I want to show you here in the engine bay, see this little tube right here that goes into a valve enclosed in this plastic housing. Under hard acceleration, this butterfly valve is going to open up and pull in a little bit of the intake engine sound. Not the whooshing part, but the revving part. And that takes the audio through a tube to an outlet somewhere under the dash through the firewall. Ford's not the only company doing this, but it's an interesting statement on the fact that cars have become so well sealed and quiet inside that now when you want a performance model to sound like one, you have to circumvent your own engineering to bring in some noise, something we used to get for free back in the 60s and 70s. There's that nice sound coming through that thing that Ford calls the sound symposer. Just a nice little tight engine note. Nothing raspy, nothing intrusive, and then when you're not on it, things get quiet again. It's a nice little touch, I gotta say. Now we're on a twisty road here, and here's what the car does that I love so much. It does what all great cars do. It loses weight when you get on the accelerator. From a 911 to a well-balanced Audi to this car, the great cars all feel lighter than they really are. That's the great attribute, and this one nails it. Clutch and gearbox are real good. It's a hydraulic clutch, so it doesn't have that kind of, I don't know, overly light feel of a cable-operated mechanism. I prefer hydraulic. And the gearbox throws are all a good reach. Not super tight, but no one would call them long. Now, you're going to read some breathless reviews about this car that say it has absolutely no turbo lag, it doesn't have any torque steer, and they're wrong. It has a little bit of that. No one's ironed that out, certainly not at this price point. So when you're down at low RPMs in regular traffic, let's say, and you need a boost real quick, that's when you're going to miss it. It takes a moment for some power to develop. If you don't keep the thing on the burner at higher RPMs, it'll be an issue. Now, as for the torque steer question, when the front wheels lose a little grip, they scrabble around doing this a lot, trying to get back on track. That's a front wheel drive high torque thing, and you can't conquer that either, not entirely. But all in all, the car's balanced. It's got a vectoring technology. It's not torque vectoring with power. It's vectoring the inside rear as part of the stability control. It'll do a little inside rear drag brake, and that'll nose it around and give you a little bit of oversteer, or at least prevent understeer. The steering is electric assist on this car, and I agree with just about everyone who's driven it and thinks it's a great, well-done system. Bottom line, this car sets out to be practical. It's based on a four-door hatch with a decent cargo bay, sporting in a way that is really accessible on real roads, and economical. And it nails those. I love cars that set out to do something and do it. Okay, price in the Fiesta ST starts us off at about 22 grand with destination. Then there's really three things to add to go CNET style. $795 for navigation, $2,000 for the Recaro package, the seats, heated and heated mirrors. By the way, the base seats are also heated, and another $800 to get the moonroof. Purists are going to delete that to keep the center of gravity and the weight from moving around. Now, all in about $26,000. I think this car is a good value, though it's a $26,000 Fiesta. That kind of throws some folks back on their heels. But this car sets out to do a certain mission and accomplishes it well. And I like any car that does that, whatever the mission is.